Wound is at the center of everything. I don't think we have any chance of getting through the day, creating love, creating life, creating decency, creating integrity, creating joy, without understanding our relationship to our woundology. When we're wounded, we step away from being heroes. We go work with our wound. So either when we're wounded, we feel like we don't deserve to be a hero, so we step into kind of an ordinary life. Or when we're wounded, we cover up the wound with this extreme pseudo-eros that then becomes anti-eros, and we become villains. So what we need to do is we need to instead become wounded heroes. The alternative path is the wounded hero. In the ancient mythologies, it was very clear that you had the revelation of the gods and goddesses, right? You had the world that was kind of obvious to everyone as kind of alive with spirit. You had a vision of self. You had a vision of the next world, right? All those things have been denuded, right, from the center of culture. And so the wound now devolves. The wound devolves into some sort of mental malaise, into some sort of breakdown, into some sort of depression. We've lost the capacity to alchemically transform the wound into the wounded hero. So we need to reclaim the hero. The hero feels the whole. The hero has a direct experience that I've got something to do that can be done by me only, that's needed, that's my unique gift, right? That addresses a unique need and the circle of intimacy and influence. That's what the hero is. And the hero is filled with this love of the whole, this connection to the whole. The hero is willing to sacrifice for the sake of the whole. And what we're now adding to this is that the hero is not actually Clark Kent, who lands from his planet Krypton, got this kind of perfectly muscled body in a perfect blue suit with kind of bluish hair a little bit. And he's always, kind of looks perfect and is always completely balanced. No, I can't become the hero unless actually I have a very deep sense of my wounding. I have a unique wound, which is not the same as my unique shadow. My unique shadow is my unique pathology, the way I act out. My unique wound is this unique hurt. Where do I feel hurt? For example, my unique wound might be I feel disrespected. Just as an example, right? That's a particular kind of wound. I feel disrespected in some fundamental way. And if I feel disrespected, that triggers something in my wounding structure, right? Another different kind of wound is I might feel not attractive, I'm not alluring. If people don't want to talk to me, it's a completely different kind of wound, right? A third kind of wound is I might feel like I'm too much. I'm too much. I'm just too much. That's my unique wound, right? There's an example. Those are three completely different wounds, right? Too much, right? I'm not alluring. I'm not respected. Wounding is at the very core of my heartbreak, And because we don't have a language for heartbreak, we don't know how to experience heartbreak, we turn heartbreak into trauma. All heartbreak becomes trauma.
Yeah.
So in other words, we turn the tremor of heartbreak, the trembling of heartbreak, into the terror of trauma. That's a mistake, because actually heartbreak is one of the most magnificent and important experiences of being alive. One of the ways we can distinguish between trauma and heartbreak is that if I stay with the emotion and I feel the feeling to completion, heartbreak has the capacity to open me. But when I actually arrest the feeling, when I inhibit the feeling, then it can go inward and actually turn and poison into trauma.
I have one more question for you, Bart.
Please, brother.
That's all right.
Please.
I'm thinking about in my own life when I've been wounded, right? One word you haven't used in this conversation is when we feel unloved, or when we feel like rejected, when we feel kicked out of the Garden of Eden, so to speak, right? That's where the wound begins, right? It's when we feel unloved. So you didn't mention that word love. That seems to be the crux of the issue, as far as I can see.
One of the words I like least is love.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right. In other words, I love the word outrageous love. It's a word that we created together. Evolutionary love, Eros. Right. Love itself, has become a word that's overused and, ill understood and ill felt. We don't even know how to feel love. But I think at the core of what you're saying is that the essence of wounds are relational. We feel somehow insulted. We feel somehow unloved. We feel somehow violated.
Yeah.
In the unlove. We feel somehow exposed. In some sense, all wounds are insults that we failed to transform into the wounds of love. That means something very precise. It's very deep. How do I take an insult? And it's very beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful things that can happen. People can have, let's say, an exchange, and there's some misunderstanding, and one side or the other side feels somehow unseen or unappreciated or disrespected or not held. That's the human process. And that process can either devolve, right, into a kind of frozen armor and kind of demonizing. It can create kind of cycles of anger, and that's what happens in most relationships. Or there's the sense of like, hey, I want to share with you how I felt, and this is how I felt. And then the person receiving it from the beloved can either spend all of their time defending, and maybe there's some responses that are important and explanations, or like, wow, right, yes, no, let's unpack together what happened. Let's share information. Let's find each other. And then there's this strange paradox. It's the great potent paradox of being human, that when we actually live our wound together and we share it and we exchange and we're vulnerable and share information and we clarify, we come out loving each other more than we did before. We wouldn't want to have not had the experience. It would be a loss. We'd be more bland. We would be less deep, right? But actually what happens is in the ordinary exchange of the wound, becoming something else, of being transformed, this process of alchemizing the wound is what blows love open. And the great loves of our life are not the people we're never wounded by ever. It's the people that we alchemize the wound again and again. And
we stay in the fire in some sense, like
we stay and we become more from it. But I'm saying it's not just that we don't leave. It's not just that we don't turn away. That's true, but we actually love each other more. Yeah. We become more filled with fire, more filled with depth, and we begin to have that quality that actually is the source of, and it's the place where true love lives, trust. We begin to trust each other. We trust that we can walk through the wounding, right? And that we trust that we can be wounded together. And that's the place where our bodies can relax. It's a place we can open, a place where our stomach muscles can unclench, right? We can spread our hearts open, right? Is that actually we trust that we can walk through the wounding together. It's like, like, okay. So that's where the conversation begins.
That's heroic. Yeah.
That's heroic. That's the wounded hero.